Well, it's a short story. My mother thought I was a good writer, and I was flopping around in college looking for a major, and I got into the journalism program in college and wound up working for a newspaper. Indianapolis in the 1960s, to me, was a big city. I had come from a small city about 40 miles east in Indiana. And I thought I had made the big time when I landed a job as a reporter on the Indianapolis Star. Just worked my way up the ranks. I was a feature writer and a rewrite man, and then a police reporter, and then they assigned me to the courthouse beat. And it was while I was on the courthouse beat that this story came into my lap. I don't recall anyone jockeying for the story. I think it was my lot to take the case. Among my first duties on the Star were writing obituaries. And when you write 5 or 10 deaths a day, whoever it is, you become rather jaded to death. And then you go on the police beat and you cover all kinds of horrible things and you become even more jaded. So, as a reporter who'd done that kind of work, it didn't affect me that greatly. I mean, it was horrible, of course, but it was almost just another story to me. It was a lower middle class neighborhood. People were mainly renters, not homeowners. That doesn't mean there weren't homeowners around the neighborhood, but there were a lot of rentals, and so people came and went. New York Street was a major thoroughfare going east. One way, people working downtown that lived in more prosperous neighborhoods on the east side, on the far east side, they'd take that street on the way home, and they'd go through there and they'd see working stiffs leaning out of the window in their undershirts. And they'd see kids playing on the sidewalks, which are right next to the street. And that's the kind of neighborhood it was.
Radio Indiana, WIBC, Indianapolis.
Parole in a 20-year-old murder case. And this is WIBC News. May 1965, when 16-year-old Sylvia Likens was tortured to death by members of the Baniszewski family, with whom the child was staying while her parents worked with a traveling carnival. When the case broke, Paul Page was our anchorman, and the late Bob Hoover, our street reporter. The following is an excerpt from a 1965 newscast in which Bob Hoover spoke with Richard Hobb, who explained what he did to the girl.
All I did was write out that thing on her stomach, and then I hit her about 10 or 15 times.
But how come?
Well, mostly because Gertie told me to.
Hoover then spoke to one of the Baniszewski children, who told him how the victim was treated.
She refused food. We tried to give her soup every once in a while and stuff like that, and she wouldn't take it.
Well, how about these scratch marks on her stomach? Who put them on her?
I did.
Why?
Well, Gertie just thought of it. She said, since you branded us, we're going to brand you. So she itched in with a pin, and I went over it. She showed me how to do it, and then I went over it. I did it.
Did you ever use any hot irons on her?
No. Yeah, that 3 on her stomach, I did half of that, and Shirley Ann did the other half.
Where'd the S come from?
What do you mean?
There's a big S branded on her stomach, right below one of her breasts.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, that's what you're talking about. Well, how about the inscription on there, I'm a prostitute and proud of it? Who put that on her?
I did.
Did you scratch it on there, paint it on there? How'd you do it?
Well, like I said before, Gertie wrote it down there with a pen, and I did the rest. She showed me how to do it, and
Had Gertie abused this girl?
yeah.
Gertrude Baniszewski, however, had a different story.
I did never beat that girl. Never. She was beat up on by other girls. In fact, my own daughter stopped her in the jaw and broke her wrist. And so, I mean, there you go. And girls around the neighborhood beat her up, bloodied her nose. One girl broke her nose, in fact, I think.
Were you ever in contact with the police on any of these occasions?
Well, in the last 2 weeks, in fact, I think if you talk to my daughters, I asked them that the children's father and I are divorced, and he's a policeman in Leech Grove, or was. And I've asked the girls repeatedly to call their dad and ask him what to do. And in fact, I asked Jenny, I said, Jenny, and I told Sylvia, I said, Sylvia, I'm going to have to call the police or somebody because I can't have the responsibility.
But the police were called only one time. And according to Hobb,
Well, I come in about, she come up from the basement, and we noticed she was cold and everything, so we carried her upstairs, give her a warm bath and artificial respiration, Well, she stopped breathing. See, we gave her a warm bath, and then she stopped breathing. And so I gave her respiration for about 10 minutes. And then I went and called the police.
By the time police found the girl, she had been dead some 8 to 12 hours.
The courtroom was packed. They didn't have enough room for the defendants on the police docket in the courtroom because there were so many spectators there. People from all over the city-county building that worked there came to see the initial arraignment in the municipal court. And it was just, it wasn't mayhem, it was just crowded. Well, the defendants, Gertrude Baniszewski is the one everybody focuses on. She was haggard. You could see that she had once maybe been a pretty woman, but she wasn't by then. And she just looked exhausted. And of course her defense was that she was exhausted while all this was happening and she couldn't have supervised it. Her daughter Paula was just sort of a slob and just sat there, and we never heard much from her. She didn't testify. Johnny Baniszewski, he was sort of cute, a little pudgy, 12-year-old kid charged with murder. The others charged were Richard Hobbs and Coy Hubbard. Now Ricky Hobbs, he's 15 at the time of the trial, 14 at the time of the murder. He looked like an ordinary teenage kid, and in most ways seemed to be. The fact was he carved a tattoo on this teenage girl's belly in the process of her death. The other defendant was Coy Hubbard. He was taller and bigger and looked mean. And he was later convicted of armed robbery after he served his sentence for manslaughter in the case of Sylvia Likens. Okay, Lester, he was a bit of a schlub, doing the best he could, you know, trying to eke out a living as a carny and trying to keep his family together and trying to keep his wife happy. Sylvia, I didn't know, of course, only from photographs and from what people said about her. She was obviously pretty from her photographs. She appeared to be a little sassy even. Jenny I knew rather well. I interviewed her in addition to seeing her every day in the trial. She was a pretty little thing. But I hate to say this, but I gotta say I don't think she was very bright. A lot of speculation's gone on about why didn't those girls escape? And it comes down to these psychological expressions of duty and loyalty to adults and the respecting your elders and things like this. But my God, these two little girls knew they were in trouble. They had a grandmother that lived in the neighborhood. They had an older married sister that lived in the neighborhood. They could have run away. They didn't. And I understand the idea of respecting your elders, and you got to do what mama says, even if it's a stepmama situation or a boarding situation, but at some point you got to flee for your life. And they didn't do it. I remember when my parents put my brother and me in a summer camp. He was 8 years old and I was 7 years old, and we were miserable. Had never been so homesick in our lives. And I mean, I actually lay down on the floor and cried in the cabin. And after the first week, they came to visit us on the weekend. We begged them to take. They said, "You're exaggerating. You can't be that homesick. This is good for you. Stick it out another week." Well, we did. We were miserable another week. Now, it wasn't a matter of life and death for us, but I understand the fear of reporting something to people who could save you. They might not do it. I'd like to think that I'd be bright enough in that situation to run away, but where do you run to? Well, at least, you know, we didn't have any place to run to from that summer camp except to our parents. At least the Likens girls, they had places they could run to in that neighborhood. The whole family, I think, was not real bright. You had a panoply of characters. You had, first of all, the lead prosecutor. He was Leroy New. He was the chief trial deputy prosecutor for the elected prosecutor, and he was a fascinating fellow. He was well educated. He had been a professional saxophonist in his younger day. He was tall, athletic, and handsome, and he was one of the toughest cross-examiners you ever saw. He was a literal star of the courtroom. Gertrude Baniszewski's lawyer was a character of characters named William Urbecker. He was tall, nearly bald, had a mustache, in his 50s, and he was flamboyant. He was the kind of guy that would write 30-page briefs overnight, and he wrote good briefs. He was an intelligent lawyer. He knew the law. He knew how to play a jury. He just didn't have the client that Leroy New had. Poor William Urbecker had Gertrude Baniszewski. Leroy New had the state of Indiana. Leroy New had the upper hand just from the clientele. But Urbecker did as well as he could with that job. Well, I believe she was sane. I'd seen no reason to indicate that she was crazy. I'd seen her come and go every day. I'd seen her confer with her lawyer. It reminds me now of a will contest, famous appellate case in Kentucky. They contested the man's will on the grounds that he was insane, he was incompetent to make a will, he was crazy, and part of the testimony they had to show that he was crazy was that he hung cats from the rafters in his basement. And the Court of Appeals ruled, just because you're mean doesn't mean you're crazy. Now, that's the way I saw Gertrude Baniszewski. I wish I could understand better what motivated the neighborhood children. It was part fun and games. And some of the kids would tell their parents what they're doing with Sylvia. So everybody's hitting Sylvia, everybody's punishing Sylvia. And the parents, being trusting souls, not wanting to involve themselves in other people's problems, would say, well, they're only punishing her, aren't they? And the little girl who had reported this to her mother would say, well, yeah, I guess. But the kids knew something was wrong. The parents wouldn't believe it. There was also the atmosphere at the home of being a center for activity. There were a bunch of kids living there, a bunch of kids congregating there. That's where you went for fun. There was Gertrude Baniszewski, who let the kids smoke cigarettes, and I think there was a big sexual fascination for some of them, and I'm thinking particularly of the Hobbs boy. We'll never know. He denied vehemently on the witness stand having had sexual relations with Gertrude Baniszewski, but Louis Nizer, the famous New York court lawyer, said denial is strongest in the face of circumstantial evidence impossible to rebut. But even if they didn't have sexual relations, they had a sexual relationship. She was a woman, he was a boy going through puberty. There was a fascination there, had to be. And when the cops and the coroner asked him what he was doing there, right after they discovered the body, he didn't say, I'm a friend of the kids. He says, I'm a friend of Gertie's. I see Richard Hobbs as almost as tragic a figure as Sylvia Likens. He was a tormented young man. He showed his remorse on the witness stand. He served 2 years for manslaughter. He was from a very decent family. His mother had died the same weekend that Sylvia Likens died from cancer. His father had not only Ricky but other children to take care of. It was a very tragic time for all of them. I'm sure Ricky felt that he had betrayed his father because his father had always trusted him to be a good boy, and he died only 2 years after he got out of prison of cancer. He was 20 or 21 when he died. Who were the monsters in this case? Well, obviously, the jury didn't miss with Gertrude Baniszewski, and I think they didn't miss with Paula Baniszewski. She was mean as a snake. She had no sympathy for anyone. Now, there was an incident where Paula took Sylvia to the door and advised her to get the hell out, because if she didn't, she was in bigger trouble than she already was. But that was one glimmer of sympathy from Paula. She didn't try to help Sylvia escape. She didn't find her a place to go. And she broke her arm, slugging Sylvia in the jaw, and went to church and bragged about it. I started writing the book about the time the trial ended. I think it was even a little bit after the trial ended. I don't remember exactly when I got the commission from the publisher to do it. The publisher was Beeline Books, which had up until then had done mainly soft pornographic novels. And my book to them was to become an entree into the more standard publishing world. I was still doing my regular job as a reporter for the Indianapolis Star, and so I'd stay up late at nights working on the book. That was a rather good thing for me to do because my wife had just left me and I needed a way to fill my time, and that was the way I did it. And so for several weeks, I just sat at the typewriter, and we used typewriters in those days, not computers, and batted out the copy. And I sent a first draft of the book to the publisher after about 4 weeks of that. And he sent it back. I'd written it largely based on my reporting on the trial, and the book was largely about the trial. And he said, "No, that's not what I want." He said, "Have you read In Cold Blood by Truman Capote?" which had been published, I believe, that same year or the year before. And I said, "Well, no, I haven't." He said, "Read that book." He says, "That's what I want." And so I rewrote the entire book in another 2 or 3 weeks, and in a narrative form, beginning with the Likens girls meeting the children from the Baniszewski household, and then taking it through the trial. I sort of wound up as the author of a cult classic, and it never occurred to me that that would be the fate of my book or the fate of this crime, that the interest in this crime would endure so long. To me, it was not that major an event. It was just an awful crime that I figured would fade into history, but it appears that Gertrude Baniszewski has become something of another Lizzie Borden. Sylvia? What has Sylvia become? Well, she's been canonized. There are shrines to her. There's a big unorganized fan club out there, and there are people with organizations that set up for her remembrance and this, that, and the other. I don't think she was a saint. She was a victim. But it doesn't take much to make a saint out of someone that's been crucified, does it?